Hello, everyone. My name is Phil Cafaro. I'm a co-principal investigator with the Overpopulation Project. And today I'm going to be talking with Dr. Karen Shragg about Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. Since the start of his second administration, Donald Trump has greatly reduced asylum and refugee admittances and greatly increased border enforcement, among other measures that he's taken on immigration. Both of these moves have been fairly popular. More controversially, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has initiated a series of mass enforcement actions in Democratic cities. And these have included Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, Chicago, and most recently, Minneapolis. Tragically, this most recent action resulted in the shooting of Renee Good, the shooting death of Renee Good, a mother of three. Daily video coming out of Minneapolis shows chaotic scenes of protesters squaring off against ICE agents. Here to help us make sense of what is happening is Karen Shragg. Dr. Karen Shragg is a lifelong environmentalist, naturalist, educator, poet, author, and overpopulation activist. Karen is a native of Minnesota and directed the Woodlake Nature Center in the Twin Cities metro area for many years. She received her doctorate from the University of St. Thomas in 2002. Karen has written many books and articles over the course of her career, including the excellent Move Upstream, A Call to Solve Overpopulation. And I'd like to start by reading a quote from that book now. This might actually not be a quote from the book, Karen. It's from your website describing the book. So I don't know whether this quote occurs in the book or not. From the website then, our world is overpopulated. This fact lies outside of the typical activist perspective and doesn't fit into society's dominant anthropocentric worldview. When it comes to our use of natural resources, we are taught to consider issues related to consumption, such as energy efficiency and recycling. However, the number of people is a more important factor. More people consume more resources, need more services, produce more waste, and create more world conflict as resources diminish. Working on downstream issues such as saving the environment, feeding the hungry, and ending homelessness is noble but ineffective and insufficient without also working to solve the primary cause of these and other important issues. So I read that just to let people know at the start that you are someone who, one of those rare American environmentalists who is willing to talk about overpopulation and also willing to get into the details of U.S. population policy, including immigration policy, to think about that. So I think that's important for our listeners to understand. So with that as an introduction, Karen, welcome to this discussion, which we're going to share with readers of the blog of the Overpopulation Project.
Well, thank you for having me. Anyone who wants to hear what I have to say, I'm on board. They might
That's
not
terrific.
agree, but we all have to have a voice, and we often don't. Often the people that are noisiest have the voices instead of those people who have the knowledge. Hopefully, after all these years in the field, I have something to base this on rather than just pulling it out of my hat. So, not wearing a hat today. So.
So you are there in the Twin Cities area right now.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening in Minneapolis right now, in your own words?
I'm going to give you an example. So, I don't know if you know much about the Hmong people, but the Hmong people have had helped the U.S. in Vietnam and were promised to a home in the United States because they helped us. And when we lost that war, many were brought here, many settled in and became citizens. And we even have among mayor in St. Paul. I mean, everything's gone. Today, it's 10 degrees, just to keep that in mind. And ICE broke down the door of a family home in St. Paul, dragged out an elderly man in his shorts and slippers, no shirt on, with a blanket over him, and brought him to a detention center where they then figured out, oh, he's a citizen. That happened today. That's just one example of the deplorable way in which they have dragged those of us who really get that we can't have untethered immigration if we want a sustainable America. They've made us like, oh, it's like you have emotional whiplash. Yay, we're finally talking about immigration. I've been wanting, and then it's the wrong way. And it's illegal. Um, I mean, there's no decency. 32 people have already died in detention centers that have been waiting to figure out if they even belong there or whatever. So it has been extremely ruthless, reminiscent of Germany. And it's, the other day, I mean, this sounds funny, but there was a guy wearing one of those weighted vests the club I'm in, and I'm thinking, is that ICE? And I'm going, no, he was just wearing a weighted vest. I mean, we're all jumpy. I mean, the
So,
sirens. I've seen ICE in my own neighborhood. I live in Bloomington, which is the same city where the international airport is, um, and but I'm closer to the river. Anyway, and you hear a siren and you're jumping. So they are going after everyone, anyone with no concern over whether they're getting protesters or whether they're getting immigrants. So what Trump is so good at doing is he's so good at weaponizing an issue to which there is some truth behind it and making it so much worse than it was.
so Karen, you told us
Yeah.
an anecdote, and
Yeah.
that's helpful. But I want to try to set the scene a little bit. So I've seen, for instance, the figure of 3,000 ICE officers currently working
I saw
in,
2,400, but yeah, okay.
yeah. So I mean, and maybe some
Around
have
there.
been
Yeah.
added. So what we're talking about here is uh, the agency bringing in large numbers of officers to then um, go after. Uh, they say go after illegal immigrants, okay, and some of these will be people with outstanding warrants. Some of them might just be caught in a sweep of a business, let's say, where ICE might think that they're illegal workers, so they might go in there and do a raid. Some of them might just be people who get caught in a random stop on the street. Okay, so the first thing for people elsewhere to understand about this is something you don't typically see this in a big American city. Typically, you see ICE working at the border. You
Right.
might have targeted raids at a particular meatpacking plant, let's say, but coming in with thousands of agents into cities and having them be there for a couple weeks or a couple months, it's something different, right? Now,
I'm
so you
yeah,
you
that's good.
you referenced how it feels to be there, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that because people are saying it feels like you're a city under siege.
Absolutely. And they also, I mean, everything has been unlawful. I mean, we have a Fourth Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment talks about that people have a right to not be illegally searched or seized. You have to have reasonable reason. There's no reason. It, it's so over the top, and they're not even letting our own police do the investigation over Renee Good's murder, and they whisked away the person who shot her, and we don't know where they are. So you talk about a force that's been given 8 weeks of training now. They used to have to learn Spanish. They don't anymore. They get $50,000 bonuses for signing up. Um, they're in camouflage masks, and it feels an awful like the military has taken over your city. Now, our own governor, who our president is no fan of because he ran against him in the last election as
Right.
vice presidential candidate, Governor Walz, has just mobilized our National Guard. So essentially, our National Guard is going to go up against ICE. Is that making our world a better place? I mean, it's under the guise of the Department of Homeland Security. I don't feel any more secure. And so it's weaponized an issue which we definitely need to address, but not in this manner.
So
And
I want to
yeah,
build on that. And I'll push you on this a little bit because
that's fine.
some things that we could probably agree on right off the bat. I don't want to see law enforcement agents with masks on and not showing badges, as many of the ICE agents are doing. So we agree on that. We would agree, I think, if we took a look at Renee Good's incident, that that was totally mishandled by the agents, and that should never have resulted in a shooting. So there's a lot that we could agree on, but I'm wondering if would you be willing to say that if ICE reformed some of those practices, you would still accept them? For instance, going into businesses where they think there are illegal workers and conducting a raid? I mean, would you accept that?
Let's put it in order. This country wants illegal immigrants. Why? Because they offer cheap labor and they do not protest and do not join unions, because to join unions, you've got to put down all of your social security numbers and everything that they don't have. So the country, as defined by the corporatocracy that we live under, um, wants illegal immigrants. They say they don't, but that's political. That's so they can get their people in office. So we're being played if we think this is about it. So I'm okay with ICE agents going into the head offices of corporations in corporate America and saying, why do you have so many people that are undocumented working for you? And you're under arrest because that's against the law. How
Okay.
come you didn't use e-verify? And they'll, oh, we didn't know, they'll claim all kinds of innocent, we didn't know. That's their job to know. Their job to know is that they're hiring citizens, or that they're under temporary work visas, or that they're under some kind of legal tenant. So that you start at the top and you say,
Okay.
why? Why are these now? I also don't believe that we as a country care that much that people don't have documentation, because that could easily be done. I have a plan. If somebody wants to get rid of or change the status, okay, of immigration to legal immigration, they would just have to um, develop a plan to, number one, it would be sort of a blanket amnesty, but with the caveat that they have to pay for their crime of entering a country illegally. Let's say that they came on their own and their relatives helped them and they didn't work for a major corporation that hired them illegally. Um, well, you have to pay a fine that covers the cost of your um, paperwork.
Okay.
Or if you don't pay the fine, then and you don't have the money, then you have to do community service, which we could certainly use it in all kinds of environmental cleanups. That would be great. And now I've heard anywhere from 11 million to 22 million people are here without documentation. Now they're all legal, let's say. Oh, maybe we send 1 million back because they didn't get vetted. They committed some crime in their original country. So now let's just say for convenience sake, we have 20 million people who are no longer undocumented. They're all documented.
Okay.
Now let's look at it from a perspective of your aquifer, the Colorado River Basin, or my aquifer here, the Oglala, Jordan. From the aquifer's perspective, they don't care. The aquifers doesn't care whether people are documented or undocumented. They go,
Sure.
82 gallons a day. We can't do that. I just looked this up. The Colorado River Basin is stressed right now, and you're still growing. You're being Californicated, as they say, people coming into your state.
But
And
Karen,
yeah, go ahead.
well,
Mhm.
Karen, so that would be an argument against what you just suggested. You just said there's a way to sort of regularize people who are in the country illegally, but it
But
sounds like
no, I'm just saying if that were the only issue, if
okay.
illegal versus legal were the issue, which is how it's being framed out there.
Right.
We don't want illegal immigrants. Then make them legal. That's not the only issue, is it? At
Right.
least not from environmental perspective. You're
We're
right.
concerned with numbers.
We're concerned with numbers. That's not what how this is being framed.
It's not
It's
how it's being framed, but it is the first time in our memory that
mhm.
you've had an administration which has sort of said, well, look, we're going to set some limits, and if you're here illegally, you should leave. I mean, that in itself is something that I've never seen since being involved in this issue, and I've been involved for decades.
Well, the way my answer to that is that Hitler ran the trains on time. It doesn't really justify everything else that Trump is doing. I mean,
Sure.
I looked up a list of the other things he's doing. If we're very focused as organizations, you and I both have associations with, very, very focused on untethered immigration that we want to close the window, legal or not legal, but we want to close the window of how many are legally entered as well, right? I mean, because we're what 125 to 150 million would be, give us breathing room in this country. It give us less traffic. It would give us even a better economic picture. And we're at 344 million.
Right.
So it's a big, big issue. But when we give Trump credit for stopping the bleeding at the border, if you want to call that, whatever you want to call it, to me, I want to look at his other track record, which is poke holes in the Clean Air Act,
Sure.
allow drilling in the Arctic, sell off public lands, all the things that he's doing while we're going, look, this good thing that he's doing, and so that's what I don't want to give him credit for, because why the man behind the curtain is doing all kinds of horrible things to things that we care about so much. The
Well,
reason I think
why
you and
can't
I,
we just
yeah,
say we disagree with what you're doing in weakening the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, but we agree with you that we need to set limits to immigration. But we don't
because
agree with how exactly how you're doing it.
because there are people who take this issue on so wholeheartedly that they sort of look the other way when he's doing the other stuff. That's why we
Yeah.
can say but I think it is a great opportunity for those of us activists who's been in this for a long time to say this is a really important issue, but it is not why he's here. It is not why he is doing it. He found something. He listened to a lot of their, what are they, something like 1,600 radio stations in the South. They're all, and Trump listened to them and he went, "Oh, I could win on that issue." He doesn't really care. He doesn't care about anything but his own gilded palace. He really doesn't care. And then you look at the numbers. I just looked some of these numbers up. 2.1 million undocumented people in Texas, 900,000 in Florida. We have 130,000 here in Minnesota.
Right.
So this idea that he is taking care of immigration because look at he's getting these elderly Hmong people out of their homes. Yay, we're safer. He's is a really good, I mean, he's really good at giving you whiplash because he goes like, "Oh, look, I care about your issue." And we go, "Oh my God, nobody else is talking about it. Let's see what he's doing." And now you're in his fold, and I just don't want to be in his fold. I think he's one of the most dangerous, I don't even want to call them presidents or leaders, that one who's in charge that we've ever had in so many ways.
Well, I think you and I agree on that.
It's so dangerous, and it's
Yeah.
dangerous to give him credit for anything. A
Yeah.
broken clock is right twice a day, and this might be one of those broken times.
So if you and I were setting immigration policy,
Hmm.
I think, and you tell me whether this is true or not. I mean,
Uh-huh.
for me, I imagine a system where you mentioned the federal E-Verify program. Again, for
Mhm.
people elsewhere in the world, this is a program where businesses in the United States can very quickly put someone's information into a computer and check it against a national database and find out with a pretty good degree of accuracy whether they're legally entitled to work in the US or not. So if we made something like E-Verify mandatory for all
Mhm.
new hires, and if we crack down on employers who were
Yeah.
hiring people illegally, I think you and I could both get behind that. And then I think we probably also both agree that we would want to reduce legal immigration. But then, as part of sort of fixing the whole situation, I would at least be pretty comfortable with an amnesty for people who are in the country illegally. Many of those could be made legal, and we could hopefully get to a place where we have less immigration, but it's more regulated. Now, all of that is very different from anything that's happening right now.
Right.
But does that sound like sort of a reasonable way forward to you?
Oh, absolutely. There's a book. I was looking it up before. I can't remember who the author is. It's called Tell Them Why. And so many times, you and I, who have been in this, we've been marinating in this for so many years, um, don't know why I care so much. They don't know why I'll bring up aquifers. Do you know where you get your water from? No. Does anybody know what their watershed is? No. We are ecologically illiterate in this country. And I think with what you just said, which I could totally sanction, we did two things. One, that we emphasize ecological literacy
Right.
in our schools. So they would say, there's limits. You can't just cram people into a place. Remember the old adage, oh, we could fit everybody in the world into Texas. I go for 2 minutes before they died of starvation and thirst and everything else. Um, but so that I want the public to tell me as an environmentalist what should be done because they can see that it's completely unsustainable. Not about race, not about culture. It's about the relationship between the demand we're making and what the world can handle, and maybe leave some room for wildlife. So I would like to on top of that, in make mandatory ecological literacy. And let's start with our CEOs of companies. In order to be a CEO, you have to take an ecology course and know how your world works. It's really about, it's not political, it's just the way the world works. I'm sorry, it's something called science, and there's something called physical limits to our water cycle and our soil cycle. I mean, I used to teach, and you mentioned I was a naturalist, and I think one of the reasons why this issue excites me so much is as a naturalist, you're able to see consequences. And I
Uh,
see the consequences of polluting my marsh will affect the turtles, which will affect the fish, which will affect the birds, etc. There's so many fallouts. So when you say anything from, oh, let's bring people here, and I'm just going, are you looking at the consequences? In the
right.
moment, it seems like the right thing to do. So, I told you this before. On one side can really frustrate me, and the other side really horrifies me. But I don't want the horrifying side to point to the frustrating side and take advantage of this political moment. That's where I'm coming from.
Well,
And I
that and
really think, yeah,
that's very understandable. But I mean, again, let me play devil's advocate here a little bit. I mean, isn't it possible that
devil is a good word. Yeah.
isn't it possible that the sort of fear that and the realization among Democrats, I mean, and let's be frank, our side, right? You and I are both on the left
Hmm.
politically. So might not it just be a good thing that people on our side realize, oh boy, number one, a lot of my fellow Americans don't want ever more immigration. A lot of them want less.
Hmm.
Number two, if I don't accommodate them in some way, they're going to go to people who will accommodate them in a way that I don't like. So what my point is here, it seems at least possible that by doing these kind of obnoxious uh, citywide enforcement actions against so-called sanctuary cities like Minneapolis, it might just sort of frighten Democrats into being more willing to make a compromise on all this. And again, you'd have to work out what the compromise is. But isn't it at least possible that something good will come out of some of the bad things that Trump is doing?
No,
Why not?
because the people that I talk to who are experiencing this, it's creating a much bigger crevasse into the political divide. It's let me step back 2 years ago when I was invited to speak here in Minnesota to the International Wolf Conference. And I had done a program called What If Wolves Could Vote? And it was all about how one side is going to get rid of all of the protections, which it is doing,
Right.
and the other side was going to ignore immigration. And both were bad. And my conclusion in my talk is the wolves would walk out of the voting booth with no one's going to, kind of thing. Well, guess what happened? They
What?
found out that I was going to use the word immigration and they banned me from doing the talk.
Okay.
So, all right. So here we are. That's why this is so surreal to me. I don't think by
But
having ICE come down on immigration, they still see it as a racist thing that they're doing. It's not, I haven't heard a word about sustainability. I haven't heard a word about compromising to the side that wants to curb immigration.
sure, but
Um,
Karen, I'm
I
not sure that you're not making my point though, because two
what?
years ago,
Hmm.
Joe Biden was president, right?
Right,
And
right.
you were being very reasonable. You walked into an environmental conference or tried to, and you were going to say, look, the side that wants to get rid of all the legal protection for wolves and the
Hmm.
side that wants to keep growing our population so we keep taking habitat from wolves, neither of them are speaking up for the natural world. Both of
Right,
them are putting us on a
right,
path that's going to
right.
be bad.
Yeah,
And you were censored for doing that. You were
right.
kept, they didn't even listen to you. They said, we can't have that argument made. So, I mean, given that that happened, what makes you think that that would ever change? I mean, I think what can change is that people who are worried about their neighbors might say, boy, to protect them, to get an amnesty for some of them, we're willing to accept some more immigration enforcement down the line.
I think that is that I you had said is it going to open it up if there is a proposal that is ever made by a rational president that says like you and I said that put a proposal we're going to have this for that we'll do an amnesty we'll have a plan but you know that good plans or at least somewhat good plans have been on the table before and they've been thrown out because no one wants the other side to have a political win on this issue. In
Right.
other words, we are playing politics as we always have with our environment and the poor wolves and the bobcats and everything that suffer in the traffic and everything in between. So if it ever gets proposed in that condition, once things have settled down, there may be, I agree with you, there may be if people will just listen on both sides. But I don't think right now I see any move in that direction because there's no move on the other side. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's some fantasy date when you and I just go, hey, it's a Phil and Karen show. We think we have a solution for this. And they go, oh, we're tired, we're battered, we're worn. Have a seat, have a cup of tea, let's talk. Yeah, that'd be great. But I don't see right now, you're asking me about the taking the temperature of the Twin Cities right now, that it's basically, F ICE, get them out of here.
Right.
And there's no conversation. See, what Trump did was instead of opening the door to a conversation, he's not a conversation person. He's a narcissist
Well,
who does it his way. And so
he's using the issue, as you say.
that's
But
right.
but
He's
but I mean,
playing us.
again, let's
Yeah.
let's call out our side as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Mayor Fry telling ICE to get the fuck out,
Yeah.
setting up sanctuary city policies to begin with, where they're basically saying, look, it doesn't matter what federal immigration policy
Right.
is. We are,
Right.
we're our own
But
little
there's a
kingdom
reason
here.
for doing that. And the reason for doing that is I keep having to be a political person, and I don't really want to be. I just want to be a naturalist. I want to study birds. It's so much more fun, and I don't like politics. But as I've told my fellow naturalists, um, when Trump was first in office, I got called on the carpet because people didn't like that I was talking politics at work, and I go, is it politics when they just declared the Migratory Bird Act defunct and we're a migratory bird site. I don't think that's politics. I think that's just me doing my job. And so, but I think what the politics are saying is that either you hate immigrants and want to see them punished, or you love them. So people who I know would much rather choose love than hate.
Sure.
And so, given those two options, I think we in the environmental movement have to come up with a third option. I think that's what we're talking about is this isn't about love or hate. This is about sustainability, which is amazingly about love because it's not very loving to bring someone into your home and then run out of water. I
Right.
want to tell you a quick story about that.
Sure.
So I was invited by the city I was working for to do a futuring thing, and the future was 2020. That was in 19, I think 1993 or four. In 2020, what are you going to be concerned about? And I said, I'm going to be concerned that all the development I see working around me to accommodate all these new visitors, someday they're going to turn on the faucet and there's not going to be any water coming out. And the next person says, well, that might be true, but I'm really concerned that we're not going to have enough funding for the arts in high school. And and there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
we just haven't had a seat at the table for a really long time. And so when a sanctuary city says, we love you, we don't hate you, we want to give you housing, it comes from a good place. It's not a sustainable place. But then the other people say they're going to use all kind of epithets against people and do what they did today by grabbing someone that just doesn't look like them out of a house with almost naked and like it's like choosing from column A or column B, I want to choose from column C. Only
Right.
column C isn't on the table. So
Right. So
I do think you're right. You're absolutely right. This was self-created in so many ways. No question. When somebody says, oh, look, I'm sure Angela Merkel, who brought in what, 800,000 Syrians to Germany,
yeah.
Germany was what, smaller than the size of Texas. I'm sure there's a little regrets right now. Not because these are people that are evil or bad, but they are multiplying and they are taking over political situation and there's much more crime and it's what did we do to ourselves? And so it's a tough love kind of thing that we have to come up with in a way that doesn't frame us as the haters or as the unsustainable lovers. And that's really, you and I have that choice, and we just look in the mirror and just go, I don't want either of those.
Right. Right. But I mean, it's interesting. You talk about us not having a seat at the table.
Right,
You know, if you're talking about those of us who understand limits not having a seat at the table, it would be
right.
nice. But I mean, if I think of the current US environmental movement, I guess I'm not even sure I'm sad that it doesn't have a seat at the table because I think it's so out to lunch on limits
Well, I
to
didn't mean
growth.
they get a
Right. Okay.
Greenpeace doesn't get a seat.
Yeah.
It's like I need to have a t-shirt that says, I wish I belonged to you so I could quit you again. you know, because
Well,
because I look and this is where I defend the people with the heart a little bit more. Okay.
okay.
A lot of those people belong to Greenpeace. They belong to World Wildlife Fund. They belong to National Defense Council. All the people that you on paper look good, Audubon, everything, and never do they get in their magazine that comes once a month anything about overpopulation.
No.
Nothing. I
No.
mean, forget immigration is to me a subset. That's where we control our overpopulation. There's no, it's more like, look at them. I rip them up, I've set them on fire because the only ones I get to are the ones I still belong to, outdoor America, whatever it is. It's like your little marsh that you just did some water testing in doesn't matter in the big picture. You have to educate people. So they're completely uneducated about overpopulation and they belong to all these groups. So
Yeah.
no, these groups drive me nuts and always have. Excuse me.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to talk
Oh,
to people around the world about what's going on in Minneapolis right now. Is it any last thoughts you want to share with people?
well, I just want to say that try really hard not to be fooled by a president that tells you one thing and it's really another story. Dig deeper. Um, and I apologize. Not that I voted for him, but I apologize. We tried really hard.
I was
And
going to ask
and
you, are you starting to regret your vote for Donald Trump in
yeah,
2022?
right. Oh yeah. No, no, no. Check me for malaria if that ever happens, please. Um, uh, no, I mean we've had a choice in this country for a long time when you're environmentalists of who's the least bad when it comes to the environment. Who's the least bad? And now that we see what he's doing, he is the worst. And unfortunately, Democrats have kept a closed door on this issue, and that really, I think, opened the door to having him be president. So they are not without their own blame in this at all. I am not. I would
Agreed.
fault him from day one to say, "Oh, we can't talk about that because, in other words, it's this boomerang. It's like come to this hopefully rational, sane, scientific middle on this, and then we can have a conversation. But it isn't about immigration here. It's about, here's what I also think. I think if you look at this, he wants to declare martial law. He wants to cancel the midterm elections. And this is just the beginning. This is not about immigration. It's about creating chaos so that he can control the chaos and keep in power.
Well, again, I mean, that's a useful uh, a useful thought for our friends around the world. The U.S., we seem to be uniquely crazy in some ways, but we're certainly not unique in the idea that people on the right are taking this idea of limiting immigration and running with it because people in the left and center for too long have just sort of accepted the idea that more is better. So that might be a good warning for people in Germany, for people in France or Sweden. Um, so thank you for that.
Well, I think it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of hurting people in the world, and to use them as their political tool is really immoral.
Agreed. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr.
Thank you
Karen
so
Shragg.
much. Thank
Appreciate it.
you.